All right, we're live, Sean. And with that, I'll go ahead and say good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I am Kyle Nabors. Along with me is Sean Hammond. Hub will be joining us here shortly. If you were with us earlier in the week, he's been having some audio issues with his laptop. We thought we had him figured out last night, but the gremlin is back in the machine, so he's trying a couple things quick. And in the meantime, Sean, plenty of stuff to talk about this morning. We already got people in the chat. Mr. Hebrew 1974 letting us know that we're late. He is indeed correct, which is kind of a theme with this show.
It's a soft 9:30.
It's a soft 9:30. Yeah, we love Hub, dear to our heart, but I will say that it struggled with technology occasionally. So
we're doing some troubleshooting here.
Yeah, so give him a few minutes here. But everyone, thank you for joining us again. It's nice to be able to do this twice in a week. We were out here on Monday with some news, and a lot of stuff has happened since then, Sean. I mean, where's a good place to start, really, over the last 72 hours? I guess the news that maybe broke overnight that we woke up to this morning with Trevor Siemian.
Yeah, we could start there.
I didn't expect the Bears to be signing another veteran quarterback with Nick Foles on the roster.
No, and for a couple of reasons. One, a lot of people have pointed out the roster bonus that Nick Foles just got within the last week for being on the roster. I think it was about $4 million. You would think that they would try to move him before that, but these things are complicated. Who knows if they can even find a buyer for Nick Foles? I don't know what that market would look like right now, but they're bringing in Trevor Siemian, and he is an experienced backup. And, he's a guy who stepped in and made a few starts for New Orleans last year. And they were 0-4 in his starts, but he wasn't terrible. 11 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. That's at least a pretty good stat line. Now, it wasn't always pretty, but he's certainly a guy who can step in there and play the position if Justin Fields were to get hurt. But yeah, I don't know what you do with Nick Foles now. Now you have these 3 quarterbacks, and they actually still have Willis on the roster. What is it, Patrick Willis? The guy they signed in December last year.
I don't even remember that name.
So they got 4 quarterbacks right now, which I mean, you're going to probably want 4 anyway going into training camp, but they'll pare that number down. I don't know what this means for Nick Foles. I would think they're going to try to move him. I don't know what that market really is gonna give you in return.
Well, I mean, let's look at this quick. I'm going to bring Hub in here. Hub, I'm putting you on here. Can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
What do you know? Apparently, I can't use my laptop anymore, but I can use my phone. So that's and by the way, it's Ryan Willis.
Ryan Willis. I'm sorry, I'm getting my Willis's confused.
I would say Patrick Willis was the old linebacker, right?
Of course, there was PJ Willis, who was a Bears quarterback in the early '90s. But I think there's so many Ryans in the Bears these days that it's just hard to keep them all straight.
I just wrote his name in our story like 2 hours ago, and I already forgot it. So that's not a good sign.
But like Timothy Wire was talking about realistic compensation for Nick Foles if they tried to trade him, like a conditional 6th, like a 7th round, maybe like it becomes like a conditional 5th or 6th round if he starts a certain amount of games or something like that. Would that make sense?
Well, I don't think you're going to get it. I mean, by all accounts, they tried to trade him last year and couldn't get any offers. My suspicion is that in doing this, they've already been trying to trade him. And I think the bottom line is that people are assuming, other teams that they're either going to keep him or cut him. And so why give up a draft pick at all? And the other thing that you got to realize about Nick Foles is that there is still dead cap money there. There's another $7.6 million in dead cap money. And so, it's hard to do. I guess that even with that, based on his cap number this year, there'd be some savings, but you got to eat that money. And I don't understand what the point of that is. The idea that Trevor Siemian is a better backup than Nick Foles is insane, so it just gets a little harder to figure out what they're doing here.
Jabari jumps in. Hey, you guys owe us Bears fans some extra time on this nice Friday. Your definition of nice Friday and mine is a lot different, but yeah, we definitely will stick with you a little bit longer today. As long as the questions are rolling in here, we'll spend a full hour like we typically do on a Friday Hub.
Yeah, Jabari, I apologize. This whole process was working great for about 4 or 5 months. and something has gone wrong with my computer that we keep battling, and so I'm actually on the phone now, but it seems to be working, so forgive us for that. But we do want to spend as much time with you as we can. So guys, I don't know where you opened. I guess, was it with Trevor Siemian, or were we
Yeah.
discussing the great Ryan Bates acquisition?
No, we can get into that though.
Yeah, it is Ryan, isn't it? Now that I think about it.
Yeah, trust me. I be careful about the wading into the Ryan Bates conversation. It's left Bears Twitter pretty divided. I threw out the question yesterday, or I guess the comment that I didn't quite get the excitement. Maybe excitement was a too strong a word. I don't know if fans are excited, but I feel like they're at this point a little bit starved for any hope when they look at the free agent class. So, even a small sample size of Ryan Bates only having 4 career regular season starts last year. I mean, he did perform well, and he performed well into the playoffs in those 2 games. So it does seem to have fans a little more riled up than you would expect for a guy that was an undrafted free agent who didn't have a start in the league until his 4th year.
I mean, guys, at this point, what they've done is they've decided not to, according to my sources, they didn't even make an attempt to re-sign James Daniels. They basically just said he was going to move on. Now, we do know that Ryan, I almost called him Pace, Ryan Poles told us that, he wanted to reimagine the offensive line, that they want to get more athletic, they want to get lighter, and these are obviously the guys he's bringing in. James Daniels was not the biggest guard in the league, but all that aside, he has little Pro Bowl potential. I mean, the guy is that kind of prospect. They've now replaced him with 2 guys that are basically off other teams' practice squads. When you look at Dakota Frazier and Ryan Bates. And that's assuming they get Bates, by the way. The Bills can still match that offer. But the thing that's really troubling to me about this is that he did start in the playoffs. He did allegedly play fairly well. And they still went out and signed Roger Saffold. So what are the Buffalo Bills telling us about Ryan Bates that Ryan Poles doesn't seem to see? And that's why, Sean, I hate to go here, but we kind of suspected from the beginning we were going to see a rebuild here. When both Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus in our first 2 visits with them refused to use that word and said they were going to try and compete right away, I figured, okay, so it's a combination rebuild, reboot. This just feels like a tank at this point, with the moves that they're making. And I hate to say that, and listen, there's people out there who will applaud that too. I understand that. But at the end of the day, I don't know how else to look at this as these moves. I mean, he talked about the second and third wave of free agency. Well, I would think the second week of free agency would be a time to be shopping heavily in that. And what we've got is Kari Blasingame, Dakota Frazier, and Ryan Bates. And so it's hard to call this anything else, but they're just tearing it down to the studs. And I'm sure they'll try and win this year, but I don't see how they're going to with what's going to be left on the roster.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. I mean, I think this Bates signing is all about his high ceiling and not so much what you have right now. There's the hope that, he made a few starts last year and he started in the playoffs. Sure. Maybe he can be a starter if you need him to be. Certainly the way things are shaping up for next year, they don't seem like they're going to make a big splash at that right guard spot, which James Daniels left. So, I mean, it's looking like it's potential, at least at this point, it's looking like it's possibly Bates's spot, or maybe they go out and draft somebody. But I'm kind of with you, Hub. I mean, we have talked a lot about how, in a perfect world, you would maximize Justin Fields' rookie contract, which he's under for 3 more seasons at least. And I don't know that, I don't know. We don't know what Ryan Poles is thinking. This certainly feels like they're playing a lot more long-term than maybe we thought.
Guys, I always worry about, young executives who come in, and I think I listen, we're not going to judge these guys. There is a honeymoon period. We don't even see anything in Matt Eberflus yet. This is all Ryan Poles show so far. And so, we talk about honeymoon periods, and there has to be one. And whatever they do in their first year is pretty much acceptable because it's based on a plan that got them hired to build a contender. And so I think our focus has to be, at least for now, until we start to see these guys play, how they're going about it. And I always worry about these guys who seem to think they know more than other people. When you're signing other teams' practice squad players that are likely going to be starting for you, or even you look at some of the more interesting acquisitions. I mean, we don't know that Lucas Patrick had another market. If anybody else was trying to sign him away from the Packers, we pretty much know that Equanimeous St. Brown and Byron Pringle didn't. As near as we can tell, Qasim Muhammad's market was the Colts, the team he was with. So, they are, as near as we can tell, signing a group of guys that other teams don't seem to want all that badly. I thought what was interesting about Bates, at least, is that allegedly he had 3 visits this week. So that's something, but
yeah, I mean, he did visit Minnesota and New England, I believe, were the other 2 teams.
You're right.
Yeah, but Hub, I'm on the same page as you. Like, the Buffalo Bills, the last several years have not. I mean, while it's been a very good team, I think one area they have struggled has been on the offensive line, particularly on the interior of their offensive line. And Ryan Bates couldn't crack the starting lineup. And then once he did, and he did perform well, but it's still, I mean, they placed essentially, is it the lowest tender possible on him?
Well, the non-compensation tender. The original, it's called the original tender, which he was an undrafted free agent. So, yeah, it's the minimum for what would be a 4th-year player.
Yeah. So, I mean, that doesn't seem like a huge vote of confidence to me. I mean, is there upside there? Potentially, but I think trying to draw this, some people want to think this is like some Pro Bowl level potential here, but that's really, really a leap based on a small sample size of game tape here at the NFL level. And the other thing, when I posted the comment on Twitter, I got a lot of feedback that I wasn't expecting about James Daniels. A lot of people, at least I shouldn't say a lot of people, because you know how Twitter is. You tend to get the extremes one way or the other. So this isn't exactly representative of probably how all Bears fans think. But the one comment that I did consistently get was the fact that James Daniels, to them, underachieved, which I think is incorrect.
Well, I agree. I mean, he got switched back and forth from center to guard. And even at center, the problem apparently was with the line calls. At least that's what we were told. It wasn't with his play, although he was learning. And then once they put him at guard and left him there, he had a pretty good year this year. And why would the Pittsburgh Steelers give him $9 million a year and guarantee him $20 million if he didn't? And I thought, according to the market I was hearing, that they got a bargain. But let's go back to the Bills for a minute. If Ryan Bates had that kind of potential, why did they just do a 1-year, $6 million guaranteed contract with Roger Saffold and say he's going to play that left guard position? I mean, it doesn't mean Bates is a bad football player. It doesn't mean he won't go to 6 or 7 Pro Bowls for the Bears. It doesn't mean he will either. But the point is, these are the guys that you're bringing in, and you're certainly not building a contending team with these guys. And so it just feels like they're manning these positions and hoping that they strike lightning. If they were sitting here with 10 or 11 draft picks, it might feel different. But they've only got 6 picks in the draft,
and no first round pick.
Yeah, I mean, 2 2s and a 3 isn't bad. You can do some things with that. You may get some good football players, but you're certainly not going to, build your Super Bowl team of the future with those 3 picks. So and then the other thing that, when I was able to finally get connected that you guys were talking about, I mean, I don't understand in what world Trevor Siemian is a better backup than Nick Foles. He certainly isn't a mobile athletic quarterback. It's not like he better fits Foles clearly doesn't fit the style that they want to play, but Trevor Siemian really doesn't either, and so I don't know. It leaves you scratching your head a little bit as to what exactly they're doing. Other than, Ryan Poles has his vision of what an NFL player should be and play like and look like, and he's bringing in guys that he believes have the potential to fit that mold.
Our friend and colleague Mark Potash in the chat again today, Hub. I'll let you read this one.
Okay. Well, Potsy's here. Daniels, Patrick Bates, Ryan Poles' intuition and judgment about offensive linemen is on trial already. Maybe he does know more about these guys than everybody else. We'll see. Well, Potsy, you're right, and that's the point. And again, Mark Potash, the Chicago Sun-Times Bears beat reporter, good enough to join us most weeks when we do this, and that's what this comes down to. It feels to me like, Ryan Poles is potentially wasting his honeymoon period, Sean, because if none of these guys become players, uh, people are going to lose patience quick, but that's what he's doing. He seems to think that he can get more out of offensive linemen who have not succeeded elsewhere than the teams they've been with.
Yeah, we'll see how that plays out. He's talked a lot about adding depth, and that's certainly, what he's been doing here lately. But, you can have all the depth in the world, but if you don't have 5 good starters, I don't know what that really gets you.
Hub, I want to throw this question up too because it kind of went hand in hand. This is from DTH Holmes, who said, Hub, you seem to be glossing over the fact that we have not one, but 2 prior offensive linemen making these calls. I lean more towards trusting their thinking more than other executives. And this is a line of thinking I've heard a lot so far when it comes to the way the Bears are building the offensive line. A lot of people are kind of gravitating to the fact that Ryan Poles is a former offensive lineman and using that as a barometer for these signings.
You may be right. My response would be that Matt Nagy is a former quarterback and was considered one of the top young offensive gurus in the NFL.
Great response.
I mean, guys, that's exactly what's happening. And they have their vision of what they want their offensive line to look like. And by the way, Ian Cunningham spent the last 5 years in Philadelphia where they did offensive line really well. Ryan Poles spent over a decade in Kansas City where they had to blow up their offensive line just a season ago because they weren't happy with it. And so, I'm not trying to make anybody unhappy. That's a reasonable position to take. And I hope you're right, but it's also wishful thinking, quite frankly. The idea that these guys, can make offensive linemen out of players who weren't elsewhere. I struggle with that a little bit, but I hope you're right. I really do.
I think you hit it on the nail on the head there, Hub. It's really you're going on faith at this point, and that's fine. And it can work out, and the Bears might have a plan, and they're just fine with losing a bunch of games this year, which definitely seems to be the case, and that can work. They could end up with like the number 2 or number 3 pick. Hit the nail on the head with that draft pick and have a good free agent class next year with the development of Justin Fields and be right back in it. But I mean, considering what we've seen so far in this free agent class, you're hoping that, there's not really any hard evidence so far to show that this team is going to be ready to compete in 2023.
I think, guys, the real question is, because this is something else that we don't know yet, what do they think about this young talent that they're inheriting? I mean, have they convinced themselves after their self-scouting that they can build a quality offense around Justin Fields, David Montgomery, Khalil Herbert, Darnell Moody, Cole Kmet, Tevin Jenkins, and Larry Borum, and Cody Whitehair? Because that's your offense right now. And I hope they believe that, and that they can supplement those guys with these, developmental players that they're bringing in. The defense, at least when you sign a Nicholas Morrow or an Al-Qasim Muhammad, or even Justin Jones, you've got guys who've got some notches on their belt in the NFL. But what they've done so far on the offensive side, excuse me, is you let Allen Robinson and James Daniels get away and you bring these people in, you are not as talented a football team as you were when you started. And so that's where this confusion is coming from.
Well, if you're going to tear it down, wouldn't you tear it down all the way or almost all the way? And I'm wondering if it's possible any of these guys on the roster who maybe we haven't thought of or talked about are potentially open for, are they open to trading David Montgomery, who's entering the last year of his contract? Are they open to trading, some of those guys on the defense who have a little bit more experience? Eddie Jackson's got that huge contract. It'd be hard to move, but
hey, you're not.
What do they think? I don't know. I don't know. But my point is, if you're tearing it down, wouldn't you tear it down all the way?
I mean, so typically in the NFL, when you're talking about getting premium draft picks, you're looking at what? Quarterback, offensive tackle, edge rusher, and apparently this year wide receiver.
Apparently this year all you're looking at is wide receiver and quarterback. And even at quarterback, How is Matt Ryan? I know he's 36 years old, but how is he only worth a third round draft choice if you can get a 1 and a 2 and multiple picks for Davonte Adams and Tyreek Hill? It doesn't make sense to me. I mean, how can Tyreek Hill and Davonte Adams, each a year younger than Khalil Mack, he's 31, they're going to be 30 this year. How are they worth that much more than Khalil Mack? I mean, now obviously that's the market right now. That's what's happening in the NFL. But so now when you start talking about possibly trading a David Montgomery or an Eddie Jackson, I mean, even a Robert Quinn, if you got a 2 and a 6 for Khalil Mack, what do you get for Robert Quinn? A 4? You know, and as much as you'd like to think that you can draft a great player with every draft pick, that's just not how it works unless you've got 3 or 4 years. You know, I mean, maybe this is not a 1 year plan. You know, maybe they don't think even in Justin Fields' third year of his contract they're going to contend, but that's a real gamble, you know. So I think that's where our confusion is coming from right now. I should add, guys, you know, in fairness, we have not had much chance to get to know Ryan Poles, you know, and know what he's really thinking. I will be reporting in all our papers from the owners' meetings in Florida Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of this coming week. We'll have a sit down with Ryan Poles on Monday afternoon. And this one's always a little more interesting because it's where we get whatever the period of time is, a few minutes on the record, then a few minutes off the record. And you begin to get a better feel. And so hopefully next week, if it's Friday, if we're going to go earlier, we'll let everybody know. We might have a better sense of this. But at this point, and I hate to admit this because this is not, you know, our job, but we're supposed to know more than fans. And I probably do from the other sources I've talked to who've worked with Ryan Poles. They all speak glowingly of him. I mean, everybody believes that Ryan Poles has an excellent chance to be a really good general manager, but he's young and he has to learn. And so without knowing specifically where he's going with this, it's a little difficult to be able to come up with any conclusion than what we've got right now is that he has begun a complete tear down and rebuild, and that we should prepare for that. And again, I know that there's fans out there who will applaud that. The only problem is the whole concept of being competitive with your quarterback if he's going to be your quarterback on his rookie deal, and they can't waste that whole rookie deal, Sean.
No, they can't. I you know, certainly not if Justin Fields is as good as we think he can be. You don't. Those are really valuable years when you have a talented young quarterback, and you see all the teams that have. I mean, look at the Chiefs who now have Patrick Mahomes on that huge deal. I mean, that's basically what left them in this situation where they needed to trade Tyreek Hill, and you know, we see that across the league when these quarterbacks get to that second contract, it costs a lot, and it's going to really hurt your cap space.
I would say that with the Tyreek thing, I'm not. Yeah, the cap space is getting tight in Kansas City, but as our friend and former Shaw teammate now at the Athletic, Kevin Fishbain would point out, there's always money in the banana stand. All right. When it came to Tyreek Hill, it almost felt like one of those where, given his past history and now his age, they didn't want to give him that contract, even if they could figure out a way to do it, which I don't blame them. I do not like the deal that Miami ended up giving him.
Guys, the Davonte Adams and Tyreek Hill deals are insanity. You know, I mean, you got what you wanted for a year or two. These guys are going to be turning 33 and 34 and making $25 million a year. You know, and even though there's no way, I shouldn't say no way, it's highly unlikely either one of them is going to play more than half those contracts with those teams. There is going to be significant dead money to eat when that time comes, you know, and you know, the Bears got 4 years out of Khalil Mack, and that was a little surprising. Well, it wasn't a little surprising. You know, it was good, but then they were immediately complaining about the cap hit, you know, by year 3 and year 4. And now they're eating the biggest amount of dead cap space for a non-quarterback in the history of the league. Well, that record's probably going to be broken with either the Tyreek Hill or the Davonte Adams contracts or both. And clearly that is not something that Ryan Poles wants to get himself into, which I understand. But this whole concept of well, if you look right now, next year, according to projections, they'll have $130 million in cap space. Well, so what? If you're going to use it to sign these stupid contracts, which I don't think they're going to want to do, you're going to gobble it up right away anyway. I mean, you know, he said the right thing in his opening statement. We are going to build through the draft. They are in a tough year with only 5 draft picks. I can understand some of the cap space they've created, but they can't be planning on adding to it with the 30 million or whatever that they've got right now. I mean, they're using some of it, and you can roll it over. Spend it on guys that are going to help you spend it on guys that are going to help you make Justin Fields a better quarterback. I guess that's the major concern here that I have. I don't know if you guys agree, but they've made it harder on Justin Fields, not easier on him with what they've done so far.
I mean, we talked about that a little bit on Monday. I'm going to throw this up from Arch Creep. Looks like a bunch of bridge moves until he can clear the mess. Pace left, not boding well for Fields. And you look back at last year, and I think all three of us agree there is still a lot of upside from Justin Fields, and there's a lot that we liked from Justin Fields, but there was also a lot that we didn't like. And I don't think any fan can say that he performed well last year. And listen, this is where we get into, well, whose fault is it? And if you want to say it's, it was all on the coaching staff and Matt Nagy and not on Justin Fields, whatever, that's fine. But either way, it did not go particularly well for Justin Fields in the first year. Now you leave him with absolutely zero talent around him at this point, really, at least proven talent. And you expect him to get better in the second year of his deal. And now all of a sudden here you are going into year 3, and you likely still won't know what you have in Justin Fields. And let's not kid ourselves. We're going to start getting antsy. Fans are going to start getting antsy if we're in November and Justin Fields is still struggling.
Well, I think it was the second column I wrote after, Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus were hired is now we'll see how long the honeymoon period is. I mean, guys, and I don't want to be preachy. I think I talked about this last week too, or I guess we were on Monday this week. But things never should have gotten as ugly as they did with Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy. I'm talking about amongst the fans, even amongst some of the media. Over 4 years, these guys had a winning record. They had one losing season. They had 2 playoff trips. They each had a of the year award. It didn't go well in the end, and they needed to be changed, and they did. But that's not failure by the same standards that you see with most of these other guys getting fired. And yet, we have this whole segment of Bears fandom that thinks that they were just the worst coaches in history and worst GM in history, and everything was their fault. And the good players that they had. I mean, if they were that bad and they made the move for Justin Fields, then why do you have so much faith in Justin Fields? Some of this stuff just doesn't really connect until you get realistic about it. The reality is, it was everybody's fault. Yeah, Matt Nagy could have done a better job. Ryan Pace could have made some better moves to go with some of the good moves he made, but you can't ignore the fact that the reason Justin Fields was the 4th quarterback drafted in the draft last year, the biggest check mark on his scouting report was doesn't always see the field well and read defenses well, doesn't get rid of the ball quick enough. This was the concern that some of the top scouts had about him. Now, others said no. Some talked about an elongated throwing motion. I don't really see that as a problem. I still love the kid's tools. I still think that he can learn. Reading defenses is something you can learn. Now, that's where this breaks down, guys. You can learn to read defenses, but do you have the processing ability? Does your
under
twitch
pressure,
motor skills, whatever you want to call it, once you've read it, can you unload the ball quick enough? That's God-given. Okay, only a few guys have that. But you don't know if they have it or not until they're reading defenses properly. And that you learn through coaching and observing, by the way, watching the good ones do it, which they didn't let him do, and then getting out on the field and playing. So Justin Fields may or may not be the franchise quarterback of the future. I still think there's a really good chance he can be if they not only coach him better, but if they give him the right tools. And if he doesn't have NFL receivers, and if he doesn't have 3.5 or 4 seconds in the pocket from a decent offensive line, that's not going to happen, Sean.
That's why you need Trevor Siemian, because he's going to get his head ripped off. Maybe they need Foles too. Maybe they need to keep all 3 of these guys and just make sure they have a body.
Well, I mean, I texted both of you guys this yesterday that I wanted a Venn diagram of Bears fans last year that wanted Justin Fields to start from day one. And listen, I was among them. I wanted Justin Fields out there right away. And if you were among that group, it was because you felt that he needed to get the experience right away, throw him in, get him going. But so if you believe that, you shouldn't be you can't also be the person now that's saying, rip this down to the studs and give him nothing to work with in year 2, right? If you wanted him to have the experience, you should want him to have some talent around him this year.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's to say that this is good for him so far, what we've seen so far is really silly. Now, we do know that there's going to be some significant changes to the offense, that this is going to look more like a Packer offense that actually does count on the run game, or at least hopefully use the run game more effectively, use play action more effectively. That will buy them some more time. But at the end of the day, guys, I was actually thinking about this last night. I don't know how good the Green Bay Packers are going to be. Yes, Aaron Rodgers is God. I understand that, or at least some people believe that. Davonte Adams, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, and Equanimeous St. Brown. The only receiver that he threw the ball to with any regularity that's left is Alan Lazard. And they got the rookie, the kid they drafted in the second or third round last year, who was okay. Rodgers, I think it was. They're not that good at tight end, although they did keep Robert Tonyan for a year. And
coming off an ACL, though.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that the Packers offense that the Bears are trying to model is going to look all that good with untested wide receivers, So the switching schemes may or may not help Justin Fields, but you still got to have the people to run it. And I think that's the concern. Now, could they be planning? Have they already targeted 2 or 3 rookies, that they're going to make moves to draft no matter what, or that they hope will be there for them, who they think can start immediately? If that's their plan, then fire them right now, because that's just you can't plan. I'm sure it's not. I'm not trying to be hard on these guys, and I shouldn't say these guys. It's Ryan Poles. I just think some more clarity would really be helpful, not only for fans, but for analysts as well, as to what they're doing here.
Brandon Johnson, I'm going to throw that. You guys are even more negative than the score. Do yourself a favor and listen to this CHGO podcast every day at 11. I do. Those guys are colleagues, and we know them well. And we're not being negative. Like, if Justin Fields hits, like we hope that Justin Fields hits, like this cures everything. But what we're trying to say is you're leaving yourself a really, really narrow path to success here, at least in my estimation.
Does Brandon work for CHGO? I'm just wondering. They're the new guys on town. Yeah, most of those guys are friends of mine. I've actually talked to a few of them. I haven't been able to hear it yet, but I don't know how else to say it. No, we're not being negative. We're trying to describe what's going on with the organization this year. I think I've said 4 or 5 times, Brandon, there's a lot of people who believe this is a good idea, if in fact they're tearing it down to the studs and trying to get as high draft picks as they can. One of the things that get lost on that is that when you do that, not only do you get the first, second, or third pick in the first round, but now your second round pick becomes almost like a first rounder, and your third round pick becomes almost like a second rounder, and maybe you even add another one that way. You don't know. So it's been tried. I don't think it's ever been done successfully, to be honest with you. In less than 5, 6, 7 years and regime changes. But negative would be saying it's wrong. They're doomed to failure. They're going to be fired in a year. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just trying to understand what they're doing, and that's, at least for me, the hard part, Sean.
Yeah, I'd love to be a fly on the wall in the Ryan Poles, George McCaskey conversations, when they were talking about this plan, and you wonder, I have a hard time seeing George McCaskey saying, okay, yeah, let's tear it down. I don't know. You have a lot more experience with him, Hub, than I do, obviously, but it just seems like that wouldn't be the plan that he would go for, but that seems to be what they're doing.
Well, George is pretty much true to his word when he says he doesn't get involved in football operations. I mean, we had the little kerfuffle last year when I reported that it was George and Ted who pushed, if not instructed, Matt to start Justin Fields as early as they did. Matt gave a kind of a backhanded denial. George gave a backhanded denial. He actually didn't answer the question. He said, no, it made me uncomfortable that he would even ask me. They did, but that was for financial reasons. That was because they were worried about, it was a marketing decision. I mean, I'll stick by that reporting for as long as I have to because of the people I got it from. And so they don't make football decisions. They don't get involved in personnel stuff, but they do get involved in the plan. Now, if you take a step back, though, I think the most important thing on George McCaskey's plate right now is finding a way to make a football palace in Arlington Heights a reality in 2026. Some people say 25, it may be 27. But if that's where the focus is, then it is actually more important that they be ready to compete and contend by 24 or 25 than it is that they do in 22. And guys, it's a multi-billion-dollar corporation. You have to, think long term. You have to have a plan, and it's not inconceivable that that's where their focus is. That they don't want to go for it now, muddle around, strike out again, have to make another regime change about the time they're trying to tell people like me who paid a fortune for their PSLs that they're no good anymore because there's a new stadium and now you got to buy them again. They got real marketing issues coming with getting this deal done. And so once they're in the position where maybe it's going to become a reality, maybe they close on it sometime next year, and actually by 24 there's a plan to break ground. That's when they better have a team, that people want to pay to see. So, Kyle, I'm not suggesting that's the plan, but it would be fairly logical business thinking, and that is George and Ted's job.
That's one potential outlook or reasoning for the why this offseason has progressed in the fashion that has. Another idea that Brock Pease threw out here, I'll read this. I personally feel Justin could be a really good QB, but we have no idea what they, I believe he's referring to the front office, the new front office, including Ryan Poles, what they think about him. So maybe they are looking towards next year's draft for QB they'd like. And I have had that thought in recent days is, maybe Ryan Poles isn't sold on Justin Fields, and this is him hedging his bet. Let me have a year of retooling this team and having a chance to see Justin Fields with my own eyes for 17 games.
Well, but Kyle, that if he isn't sold on him, then that's the next big blockbuster that's coming because you trade him right now.
Yeah,
I mean, whatever he's worth now, which is at least one number one, he ain't going to be worth next year if you're looking to deal him.
Yeah, a Josh Rosen type thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine the outcry if you go through an awful season this year and then at the end of the year they say, nope, Justin's not the answer. We got to start over there. I mean, if that's the plan, that's the worst plan I've ever heard, unless they deal him now. I mean, and after the Khalil Mack trade, I'll say one thing. I mean, he's got some cojones. There's because he didn't get much for Khalil Mack, and he went and made the deal. I'll tell you what, I'd be a lot more comfortable with what's going. I'm not saying I wanted to trade Justin Fields, but I'd be a lot more comfortable with what's going on right now if they did, because then I'd understand. I mean, if you were to turn around tomorrow, you wake up and the headline is Bears get a 1 and 2 2s or a 1, a 2, and a 3 for Justin Fields, then I'd understand what they're doing. And it doesn't appear to be going in that direction, but, it's early. We'll see.
And that goes back to what I was saying earlier. If they're going to tear it down, tear it down.
I find it odd that we're all in a place, the three of us who were like, well, trading Justin Fields
that sounds like reasonable.
Yeah, no, I think it's a bad idea. I wouldn't want to see it happen.
Right.
If you do that and he then becomes the next Patrick Mahomes, then you become the next. Well, Phil Emery lasted 3 years. Trestman only lasted 2. But I mean, it just. And now I'll go back to, I guess it was Brandon. I can understand why this sounds negative. It's really not meant to be negative. I think it's fair reporting and trying to do some analysis on what they've done so far. Guys, the more I thought about it, I like Nicholas Morrow. I like Al-Qasim Muhammad. Justin Jones, I'm not sure about yet because he's never really played that 3 technique position. As a 3 or a 4, Byron Pringle is fine. So
I like Byron Pringle, actually. I think there's still some upside there.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine what they think they're going to get out of Equinemius St. Brown. I mean, he had, 4 years in Green Bay and was practically given the job and couldn't hold it for more than a day. And then you look at some of these offensive linemen that are coming off practice squads. They're hard to get excited. Actually, Kari Blasingame, I mean, you're going to play a fullback. The Packers did that with great success. That's not a bad signing. So I was okay with what they were doing pretty much on the defensive side, as a move to clear cap space. But it's these offensive moves that are just hard to get your arms around.
Yeah, Winston Robin, by the way, where'd it go now? Here it is. He's had a few questions in here, but he, Bears fans and media just want a big splash, and that sounds like an overpay. Like, I get it that, like, you're worried about overpaying in free agency, but, like, you have the cap flexibility, not really this year, but in the future. And I talked about this a bit on Monday. There isn't just this huge glut of frontline talent in free agency every year, like you're like, all right, let's just hold on to the money and we're going to use it all next year. Because then you're just going to overpay next year anyway. The top free agents, I mean, we saw that right before free agency this year. We thought this wide receiver class going into free agency was going to be pretty good. Davonte Adams gets tagged. Chris Godwin, who's even had an ACL injury, gets tagged. Mike Williams gets a new deal. Amari Cooper, who we thought might get cut, ends up getting traded to Cleveland. And all of a sudden, Christian Kirk is getting a ton of money. So when I talk about, putting more talent around them, yeah, I thought they should have been in on Teron Armstead, and they might have been. We don't know. I saw someone in here earlier talk about having to pay essentially the bad team tax, having to overpay someone because you're not very good. And that could certainly be the case with someone like Teron Armstead, who is a veteran. But like outside of that, I talked about, I'm going to bring up DJ Chark again, but not just him, Juju Smith-Schuster, two guys that are 25 years old and signed 1-year contracts. One, you immediately bolstered your wide receivers to help Justin Fields, but let's say DJ Chark or Juju Smith, or you brought them in and they go nuts, right? Yeah, then you have to pay them, but then you've solved wide receiver again. Like, you're able to sign that extension hopefully with those guys, and you've significantly reduced your time of a rebuild. And let's say, like I said, again, they blow up. Also, now you have a number one wide receiver or a high upside 2 receiver at 26 years old that you're trying to re-sign.
Well, yeah. Although Kyle, in the respect I get what Winston is saying, and no, I don't want big deals or overpaying. I guess what I'm looking at now is there are guys out there right now. Julio Jones is not going to get much money. He's going to get a 1-year, maybe a 2-year deal. He's 33 years old. He hasn't stayed healthy the last couple of years. I wouldn't make a big investment in him, but if I can get Julio Jones for 1 year at $5 or $6 million, now I'm giving Justin Fields the chance to have somebody special for 1 year. If I can get Jarvis Landry for 2 years at 15, 16 million and not guarantee more than 9 or 10 million, Jarvis Landry is a quarterback's best friend. If I can get Eric Fisher for 2 years at 11 million or something like that, these deals don't hurt your cap. It's using some of the space they've got this year. I want proven players around Justin Fields who will help make him better. The other thing that we have ignored here, and it just occurred to me, and Brandon, I'm going to be positive here, so I hope you'll appreciate that. The third wave of free agency basically is June 2nd. What people forget is that each team can only make 2 post-June 1 cap cuts now. But after June 1, you can cut whoever you want. And so there is going to be more talent coming on the market after June 1st. And I hope maybe that's what Ryan Poles is talking about when he talks about the second and third wave. It's a real possibility. And I want to give this guy as much credit as we can because, everybody's happier when the team you cover is good. And most of my friends are Bears fans, and so I want to see this work. And so, I don't know, guys. There are other teams. I'm trying to figure out how the Miami Dolphins could possibly be under the salary cap right now. They had to be at the start of the new league year. Now they don't really have to be again until, I think, cut down time, or at least with their top 51. There are going to be other players that come available June 2nd. And maybe that's what they're waiting for. Maybe they've already put a board up of the guys they expect to be out there. It is at least a possibility.
Don Burr has been in the chat, not just today, I think a couple times over the last couple of weeks here. And I'm 99.9% sure he's a Detroit Lions fan, and he's just been in here trolling Bears fans, which is a very humorous fandom to be trolling anyone. Sorry, Don, but your franchise stinks. Potsy had come back in here with if you tank, you still have to protect your quarterback. The Colts went 3-13 in 1998, but Peyton Manning was sacked 22 times, second fewest in the league. And going back to talking about potential free agents that are still left out there, we had a question earlier about that too. You brought up Eric Fisher. I think someone like that, Hub, is a great fit because I like Larry Borum and I like the draft pick of Tevin Jenkins. A little concerned about his health now and his back after that. And but to me, Eric Fisher, a veteran, is someone out there still that isn't going to tie you up long term in cap space, but it does provide a little stability for Justin Fields.
Guys, the only other tackle on the roster right now who's had the NFL snap is Lechavia Simmons. I mean, and you know, they did. I believe they tendered him, or at least they re-signed him. And I just, you know, you can't go into an NFL season like that. They've got to bring in, you know, they're doing it at guard because they let James Daniels get away. I don't know if Sam Mustipher is going to be on the football team. I mean, Lucas Patrick told us, you know, without reserve that he is here to play center. And every scouting report I've ever read about Sam Mustipher is that he's not big or strong enough to play guard. So, but you can keep him as a backup center and a guy who could, you know, put in a guard if you had to. So, you know, at least at left guard and center, you appear to be okay. But you've got nothing but undrafted free agents for right guard, and you've only got 3 bodies at tackle. You know, they also one of the first signings that Poles did was this kid Willie Wright, and they signed him saying he was an offensive tackle, but he's listed as offensive guard. He's only 303 pounds. I think he's 6'2" or 6'3", so he's not going to play tackle. You've got to have a veteran tackle here in case it doesn't work. Again, I really like Larry Borum. I don't know if he's a tackle or a guard, but I really like him. And that's the biggest fear is that I think of the right guards on the team right now, Ryan Bates, Dakota Frazier, throw in Sam Mustipher if you want, Larry Borum. To me, Borum is clearly the best prospect, you know. And so now if one of your tackles ends up one of your guards, is Lechavia Simmons your right tackle? You know, you got to do something there.
Yeah, that still surprises me that they haven't done anything at that tackle spot because we've been saying it for weeks, and I just feel like that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, maybe a guy like Fisher could fill that role, and you don't have to commit to him long term in terms of years. You know, you can move one of those guys into guard. You can move Borum into guard. I'm just a little surprised as well that they haven't done anything at that tackle position because, you know, otherwise you're looking at these 2 second-year players and wondering exactly what you have in them.
Jonathan Patterson here followed up with an O-line starts from the inside out, football 101. You're not set on the inside either, though, Jonathan. That's the thing. Like, you went from being set inside. I mean, even if you decided you needed an upgrade over Mustipher and that was your choice with Patrick, but you know, if you then had Daniels and Whitehair, but you haven't done that, so you're not set inside either. So I mean, everything is in flux right now on the offensive line outside of Cody Whitehair, which at this point, who knows if Cody Whitehair is even going to be here in August.
Yeah, and John, listen, Patrick started at center for the Packers last year, but he's actually played more guard than center for them. And last I saw, he hadn't really gotten any Pro Bowl votes or anything like that. Let's see if he is an upgrade over Sam Mustipher. He's bigger, you know, and he did play well in Green Bay. And so, you know, Sam Mustipher was not the problem with the Bears' offensive line last year. He was never going to be great, but he's not the worst I've ever seen. And so that's fine, John. If you believe that, I'm not saying you're wrong. Then don't let James Daniels walk if that's what you believe, or do something besides bring in players off other teams' practice squads. I guess our point is they haven't done either. They haven't, you know, solidified the inside or the outside of the offensive line. And now you have to wonder, you know, the other thing that's happened, guys, forgive me, I've been battling this flu all week long, and I'm sipping tea and wiping my nose, and I apologize. The other thing that has been really concerning to me is it's not just helping Justin Fields. There's still no starting safety on this football team. And now Deion Bush just signed with the Chiefs. They still need another starting linebacker on this football team. There's still no guarantee that they have enough at defensive tackle going with last year's backups, you know, and so
they still have 2 tight ends under contract?
Yeah, I mean,
and one legitimate one.
Guys, I'm not even concerned. I'll go the other way. Ryan Poles is a genius. He has outsmarted everybody. All these other, you know, teams' rejects are going to be great football players for him. They still don't have enough to field a starting lineup. You know, I don't know. Actually, I was thinking about this as a column idea for today. If tomorrow was the Sunday after Labor Day, what would the Bears starting lineup be? And I'm going to doodle it out, and I think people are going to be very concerned when you see what it looks like. You know, you can do it too, obviously, but and it's not like they don't have time. You know, they're going to sign a lot of players between now and September 10th or whatever the date is going to be. But it's a funnel, and all the top talent is coming off the top. And once you get down through the bottom, you're talking about unknowns and developmental projects and maybe guys who aren't good enough.
Going here back to wide receiver quick. Winston had chimed in after my DJ Chark love. If Jaguars thought DJ Chark was good, they wouldn't overpay for Kirk. A couple of things there. I mean, you could be right. I mean, DJ Chark had one really good year. Did not play much last year. I mean, I'm just a huge fan to begin with. But one, you do have a regime change, which means they want to bring in their own guys. Also, Trent Baalke is bad at his job, and I wouldn't, when it comes to overpaying for Christian Kirk, I think that's more of Trent Baalke being Trent Baalke than a knock on DJ Chark.
Well, I think Winston is half right. You don't let guys get away, if you believe they're good enough. On the other hand, the Jaguars have overpaid for every player they've signed, so don't, I mean, they screwed up the whole league with that Christian Kirk contract. And I talked to several other GMs who were pissed, that when guys do things like this, when they throw these contracts out there, that's you guys have probably read this story. Drew Rosenhaus, who's been at this for a little while, was talking about the Tyreek Hill deal. And he basically came out and confirmed that Hill was close to an extension with the Chiefs and was happy to stay in Kansas City. And just as they were getting ready to finalize it, the Raiders made the trade for Davonte Adams and gave him that contract. And Hill said, okay, no deal. We're off. If you can't pay me, I'm going elsewhere. And they found somebody else willing to pay him. But I think we started with this near the top. Those two contracts are asinine, and I understand that you have two of the best wide receivers in the game right now. But for what? For a year or two? That you just gave them 7 years worth of money. If you think about it, it just that's part of what makes this market so hard. And that's one of the things I like about Ryan Poles is he said, I'm getting rid of stupid contracts. I'm clearing space. He did say, and Sean, I may get the quote wrong. I forget exactly how he put it, but I think he said, we're going to do evaluation through valuation and make sure that we are getting great value for the players that we think can play good football for us. And that's wise. And that in the long run will make him successful as long as they're getting players who can play good football for him. And right now they're signing a bunch of guys who are nothing but big question marks.
Yeah, well, you can't say he hasn't been smart with his money or wise with his hesitant to spend, I guess you can say, because that's obviously been the case from what we've seen these last couple of weeks.
Brock Pease had asked, I would love to see Landry on this team. Could Parker be available in Miami? Hub, any thoughts on Davonte Parker? I like him, but I'm not a big fan of having to give up draft picks at this point, considering the Bears already only have, what, is it 6 after? Are they at 6 now?
They have 6 now, yeah. I've always liked Davonte Parker too, but I think they brought Hill in for them to be a 1-2 punch. They did sign Cedric Wilson away from the Cowboys, but Cedric Wilson's the number 3. So, I think the idea is that Hill's 1, Parker's 2, Wilson is 3, and then they franchise Mike Gesicki. Again, I have no idea how they're under the cap, but apparently they are. So I don't think the plan is to deal Parker. I mean, I suppose it's a thought. But again, what are you going to get for him? Robert Woods, the Titans gave up a 5, and so they've got 2 5s. I suppose if you could get Davonte Parker for a 5, I'd like that deal. But I don't think that's the way the Dolphins are leaning right now.
I don't know if I'd like it for a 5. I don't know. I mean, I'm a little biased here because Davonte Parker. I feel like I just love every wide receiver at this point apparently. But Davonte Parker, I have a soft spot for the guy. I just don't like giving up draft picks. Like when you had other options available in free agency that you could have taken that route.
Well, let me ask you guys a question. How much better is Darnell Moody than Davonte Parker?
How much better is Darnell Mooney?
Yeah.
I don't think Darnell Mooney is better. I guess
well,
I kind of consider.
That's my point. He's a 5. That's
true. Yeah,
listen. Davonte Parker probably isn't going to be there when the Bears go to the next Super Bowl. I'm not sure I'll be there for that, but I want guys who can help Justin Fields today, and Davonte Parker is a guy who can help Justin Fields today. Again, we're talking about something that I don't think is available, but it's not a bad thought.
Mike Johnson now just pops in here, and this is how deep in wide receivers is the draft. Well, that's a good thing, Mike, because it is an incredibly deep draft at wide receiver. It's maybe not as top heavy the big names that we saw last year, but it is equally as deep.
They're going to have a decent option with one of those second round picks. It's deep enough in. Yeah, you hit the nail on the head, Kyle. I mean, it doesn't have a Jamar Chase that we necessarily think for sure. I mean, one of these guys could always step up and be really good, but there's some depth there to this wide receiver class.
And Don Burr,
there is. I'm sorry. I just was going to say what's interesting about it, though, guys, is that first of all, a lot of the top guys are coming off various injuries. You got to wonder about, and there's going to be at least 5 or 6 gone by 39, because I wouldn't be surprised if the Packers and Chiefs take 3 of them between them. I mean that has to be the plan. I don't know if the Packers will use both their first rounders on them, but they're going to use at least one. And I know the Chiefs went and overpaid for the Packers' problem. I mean, how Marquez Valdez-Scantling can get $30 million with $20 million guaranteed. I mean, that's like he's getting $250,000 per drop. I mean, this guy, he's one of the fastest. He may be the fastest when you look at play time. But the guy drops more footballs than anybody we've ever seen. So, the wide receiver market is just way out of whack right now.
Really quick, maybe you guys already know the answer to this. What do you think his career high in receptions is for a season?
Who's that? Which?
Valdez-Scantling.
Oh, Valdez-Scantling.
I want to say
in the 40s?
36, but I could be wrong.
You're really close. His rookie season, it was 38.
Yeah.
And that was his rookie year, by the way.
And he likes to drop the ball, too.
That's a lot of money for a guy who's never caught 50 passes.
Don Burr is trolling again about the Lions, but he actually made a point that I don't think he was realizing he was making. And this is one here. I'll be positive. Brandon was talking about us being negative. I'll be positive here. One reason that the Bears should be okay about not signing or going anywhere in free agency with wide receivers, or at least the top tier, is Don Burr had said Mooney isn't better than Amon St. Brown. I mean, I think they're both actually probably pretty good. But the point there is Amon St. Brown. What I was going to say is Amon St. Brown looks like he's a legitimate wide receiver. Was taken in the 4th round. Darnell Mooney was taken in the 5th round. That is one thing about the NFL draft is wide receiver is a position where you can find guys that end up being starters for you relatively quickly in those mid rounds.
Are we still? I haven't checked the numbers, but I'm pretty sure we're still looking for Amon St. Brown's first 1,000-yard season, which Darnell Mooney just had with one of the worst quarterbacks and one of the worst offenses in the league. Darnell Mooney at this stage of their careers is a better player than Amon St. Brown. But to your point, Kyle,
St. Brown almost got to 1,000 yards.
He was pretty close. 9-12.
Yeah, he had a really big December.
Yeah, I mean, it came on late as they got better, and he may be okay, but the idea that he's better than Moody is silly. Just based on what they've done so far, we'll see. But yeah, I mean, a lot of the great receivers have come out of day 2 and day 3. It can happen, but it's less likely. It gets harder. It's just like every other position.
You guys go ahead. I was going to say, I'm trying to find some other questions here. 8-hour vibes here. I'd rather undersign free agents for an offseason and clear Pace's problem with hope of a turnaround down the line than lock us into bad contracts. And that is a completely valid position to take. You just have to be prepared and accept the pain that comes with that. And you have to accept the fact that it could inadvertently hurt the development of Justin Fields. If you're willing to take those chances, that is an okay position to take.
Guys, we've been on for an hour now, and I'm pretty sure that none of us have criticized them for not signing any of the big money free agents. I would have really liked to have seen them in on Teron Armstead. I do worry about the injury factor there, so I'm not devastated that they didn't get him. But other than that, we're not advocating for locking in big money contracts. We're talking about guys who are available on 1-year prove-it deals at reasonable rates that gives you a chance to give, Justin Fields some tools, and that's where it's perplexing. I guess at the end of the day, guys, I keep coming back to the same thing. How do they expect Justin Fields to get better other than they're putting him in a new system. I mean, do they think, maybe they really believe in him and they think he's Superman, and in this new system, he can do it with almost anybody. I can't imagine that's what they believe, but that's kind of the way it's feeling at the moment.
Definitely feels that way. We're reaching about an hour here, guys, so we do got to get running. If you want to throw in any other questions we didn't get to, it's great to see so many people in the chat. It does make it a little bit harder to get to everyone's questions because they fly by. So if there's anything else you guys want us to get into here, we go through here. Where's Alex Pierce projected to go in the draft? Hub, do you have any background on Alex Pierce?
I'm not there yet, guys. We're going to be putting up the draft board next week, and we're going to be doing position by position review. But honestly, to start putting guys into rounds yet, I'm still knee deep in it. So I apologize for that. That one I can't help you with.
That's a good plug here. We are starting our our draft board position by position next week. Hub, I have that. We are going to start rolling out our first couple mock drafts as well. I once we get past free agency, I feel like the NFL draft talk starts way too early, and I get annoyed by it in January. But once we get into April, I get pretty excited. So this is going to be a fun time of year here.
Yeah, I think, guys, you got to realize that these pro days have just ramped up. I mean, some of them started in early March, but a lot of the significant ones are going on right now. Still gathering information from those. I think that they're more valuable than the combine in different ways. That the various scouts can get some input, at least asking to see guys do things that they want to see them do. More than that, a lot of these prospects didn't do everything at the combine, but they do everything in their pro days. And I don't want to cop out on you. The most important part is watching game film from last year. That's what draft boards should be built as. But with the physicals and with some of the things you learn about these guys, these boards change so much that's why, as a rule, we really don't usually put ours up until the first week in April. And even then, it changes dramatically over the next 3 or 4 weeks.
All right, going to hit up a couple more questions here, 2 more, and then we're going to go ahead and get out of here, guys. Let Hub get some rest. Brent Steele asks, what's the plan at tight end? Sean, I'll let you try and answer this one first.
Right now, the plan is Cole Kmet and not a lot else. I mean, they're going to have to add some more pieces there because you can't go into the season with just 2 tight ends. But, I don't know what their vision for Cole Kmet is long term, but certainly in 2022, he's going to be the guy like he was last year.
Yeah, Brent, the plan at tight end is the same as it is every other position, and we don't know what it is, at the moment. Now, the one thing I was pleased with is they did tender Jesper Horsted. They only tendered 4 players. Well, but the reason I say that, beyond the fact that I'm a Jesper Horsted guy, is that at his best, if they don't make him a wide receiver again, he's a U or a move tight end. Cole Kmet is a true Y tight end. But now that you've added Kari Blasingame at fullback, you don't need that H-back type, who can also block the run because you've got a fullback. And so you're going to see them in less 2 tight end and running situations. And so now you can go for another athlete. Again, it's a position where there's a few guys out there. Eric Ebron is one that you can get fairly cheap. I know most of the guys that are still out there, it's because they've had trouble staying healthy. And Ebron's a great example, but he had a huge year in Indianapolis when Flus was there. And he may be a guy to keep an eye on because as a U option, with Cole Kmet, again, now you're starting to create some bigger, better receiving targets for Justin Fields. But Brent, again, guys, I apologize that it's come off as negative today because it's really not. It's more just analysis. We're trying to figure out the plan. And I want to say again, be sure and follow our coverage early next week. We'll be at the owners' meetings. I will have a sit-down, not one-on-one, but with a small group of reporters with Ryan Poles. Hopefully we'll learn some more. We'll also get a chance to visit with Matt Eberflus. And we're playing catch-up like everybody else as we get to know the new kids in town.
You guys want to do one more?
Yeah, let's do one more.
Let's see if I can find let's see here. There's so many. I'm enjoying this.
You guys are coming in strong here at the end. Good work.
You know what? We had a question about Barr being cut from Minnesota and a possible fit in Chicago. Hub. I can't find it though.
Well, Yeah, I mean, he certainly is a strong side linebacker, and that's the position they're missing. The only thing we do know about Nicholas Morrow and Roquan Smith is that they're both will backers, although, they can play inside. Roquan can certainly play the mic, but he's never done it in a 4-3. He's been doing it in a 3-4. And Anthony Barr is that prototypical Sam or outside linebacker, but he's also 30 years old. I just, Sean, that's not the kind of guy. Well, I take that back. Lucas Patrick is going to be 30 years old. He's 29 years old. It might make perfect sense because Barr is unusually athletic, for a guy his size who plays the Sam, and he could be a good fit. I don't hate it. It depends on what his market is going to be. He's been out there for a while. This didn't just happen yesterday, and nobody has bit yet. But it's not the worst idea I've heard.
No, it's not the worst idea. I think it probably, in part, is going to come down to that market and what he's asking for. We have seen, a hesitancy to spend a whole lot outside of the Ogunjobi deal that fell through, and I don't know what to expect from Ryan Poles on that front moving forward. But certainly, it seems like he is a guy who could fit that spot for the Bears.
All right, guys, let's get out of here. Like I said, get some some more tea and a nice nap here this afternoon.
I apologize, guys. I have been the COVID test was negative. That's the good news, but I literally crawled.
No, you've done a good job. You've been a trooper today.
Well, it's always fun with our folks who are good enough to check in with us. And guys, we want to remind you again, if you're hearing this as a podcast, you can be part of it. You can join us live. There's video that comes with it, although I'm not sure the pictures are all that attractive. But we do it every Friday morning at 9:30 Chicago time when news breaks. If you follow our Twitter accounts, we either confirm the Friday time or throw in an extra one for you. You can see that at Sean_Hammond, at Kyle Nabors, at Hub Arkush. And if you just prefer to have it as a podcast, at least make sure you go to the App Store on your phone or iTunes or shawlocal.com to download a subscription so that it comes to you automatically. And the one thing I don't get too often enough, and I feel bad about it, is we have some of the best newspapers around. And if you have any of the Shaw Local papers or access to them or any of the Daily Herald papers, or certainly go to shawlocal.com. We've got this coverage for you 24/7. Hell, Sean Hammond was up in the middle of the night writing a Trevor Siemian story. I mean, how many people did that? So make sure you get to shawlocal.com as often as you can. Again, I will be reporting from Florida Monday through Wednesday of next week. And short of breaking news, we will talk to you again next Friday morning at 9:30.